Are you a perfectionist or overachiever? Today, we are talking about managing your energy if you identify as one of these types of people. My name is Amy Ballantyne. Welcome to Power to the People Pleasers. I'm so excited to have my guest, Kelle, here. Welcome, Kelle.
Thank you for having me, Amy. I'm excited to be here.
You know what? I I was reminding myself reading over your bio as we were getting ready, and I'm so excited to have this conversation with you, to have this dialogue. Many people pleasers, uh, many of the people that I've had the chance to speak with also identify as perfectionists or overachievers. So I feel like this topic may align for a number of the listeners today. But before we get into it, I always love to ask, have you ever been a people pleaser? And if so, how did that show up in your life?
I was the queen of the people pleasers. Yes. I was a straight A student, teacher brown noser, had to be perfect, like came home in tears in kindergarten because I colored my grapes green and the teacher marked it wrong. And my mother was so upset that she sent green grapes with me to my teacher and said, you're going to mark this right. It was,
Oh my
it was bad. It was really,
gosh.
really bad. And I swung back and forth actually because in my close personal relationships, I would be very much twist myself into a pretzel to try and make everybody else happy. That was
Mhm.
what happened in my first marriage, the whole 9 yards. But on the outside in my 20s, I was also very angry. And so, which, not saying your truth or, being seen at all would make you really pissed off. But,
Mhm.
yeah, I was very angry, so I actually on the other side of things for strangers, I would say things just to shock people and
Mhm.
just to throw them off balance because I was like, I'm gonna get my way," Just
Yeah.
like I was a mess. I
Oh.
was a total mess, which is terrifying when you think about the fact that my mother had me studying personal growth and development and metaphysics and all of this stuff from the time I was like 5 years old. And
Wow.
so, the fact that I was still a mess in my 20s and, I was like, I did have a good jump start, but it wasn't until I hit my Saturn return at 28 that
Mhm.
I really started working on myself and
Mhm.
really made use of all the knowledge that I had been given in my childhood. But
Sometimes we have to be ready
yes,
to receive
absolutely.
the info, right? Perhaps your soul just simply wasn't ready.
Yeah, well, I did it when I was getting out of my divorce, right? So I had been married for 7 years and I felt trapped because my ex would not do anything to help, with the fact that we weren't getting along and I was using all my skills and they were still
Mhm.
insufficient because I didn't take into account that it takes two. It's like little details, right? And
Small.
so yeah, so when I finally let go of that relationship and and stepped into being me and not having to think about what other people wanted, it was much easier to start doing my work, right? Yeah, because I didn't
Wow.
have to be beholden to anybody else to do it. I didn't have to get his
Yeah.
permission. I didn't have to, get him on board. I could just do it and be
Yeah.
done. So then life got a lot faster after that.
I bet. Yeah. I appreciate you sharing your own story and your own experience with this because I think many people can relate to what you've just shared. The having to ask permission. Certainly, I've witnessed that quite often. Um, Not being able to speak the truth, speak your own truth. Very, very much. I appreciate your honesty there, and I want the listeners to understand the beautiful, incredible coach you are, spiritual coach. I just want to share your bio with the listeners as well. Kelle Sparta, the spirit doctor, is a transformational shaman and spiritual coach working with high performance people to unlock hidden aspects of their potential. She teaches motivated people to master their energy to create next level results and works with her clients to uncover and remove hidden blocks, resistances, and beliefs that keep them from their happiness and success. And Kelle is also the co host of the wildly popular podcast Spirit Sherpa, where she explores all things energy, magic, and the spirit world, as well as personal growth tips to help intuitives release anxiety and increase well being. I hope that you'll all check that out. So, super excited that you are here today. And as we dive into this conversation of managing your energy as a perfectionist and overachiever, I wanted to invite you to begin with, how do we become, so if we includes me perhaps as a perfectionist, I feel like I'm improving greatly in this. How do we be more solid in ourselves and solidify our own energetic container?
So there are a couple of steps to get to that, and the first big step is to find mental, emotional, and energetic safety, and that is the process of dealing with fear and anxiety, worry, dread, self doubt, inner and outer judgments, and then to build a foundation of self support and courage. What that does is it gives you the bandwidth to grow. Okay. Until you get through that, your brain is filled with the screaming memes of, the monkey mind going, ah, 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 you suck. You're terrible at this and this is going to go wrong. Wait, yeah, you're happy now, but the other shoe is about to drop. You better be ready for it, right? All of that crap is filling your brain, right? And so that's step one. You got to finish that first. And then the next step, now that you have the bandwidth to actually do something about it, is to solidify that sense of self, to solidify your energetic container, right? When we go through traumatic experiences, they stretch our energetic container, but they also put tears and holes in it. And so what happens when that's the case, you'll know if you need to do some repair work, because if you go to try and make a big decision for yourself, not for other people, for yourself, because we're much better with other people than we are with ourselves. So if you try and make a big decision for yourself and you don't pull the trigger on that decision immediately, then all the energy drains out, right? And to even get to the point of making the decision, you had to build up energy, build up energy, build up energy. And then you got to pull it, or else it all drains, right? That says that your energetic container needs repair. Okay. And so that process is the process of solidifying your identity and your energy field. And so that is claim your space and set your boundaries, own your power, internalize your sense of value, learn how to love yourself. That also involves opening your heart so that you can love yourself, right? And emptying the well of rage that I mentioned earlier for myself. And a bunch of other energetic things in between. But yes, all of that.
Wow. So many things to unpack there. Of what you just shared, because you listed off many different components and things to take, different steps. Where do you find the majority of people when they're coming to you that you need to start with? Does everyone have the, leaks happening, or
Pretty
is
much.
there a
Yeah.
spot that you see this is where we would begin with most people?
So most people come to me in that first stage that I talked about, with needing to empty out the monkey mind, right? To
Mhm.
get that to be quiet, because that's generally the biggest thing that is causing pain for people, because that's where massive anxiety comes from, right?
Mhm.
And it's generalized anxiety. It's like, I'm anxious. I don't even know what I'm anxious about, but I'm anxious, and I feel like you try to sit down to relax, and you have to get up immediately because you're like, I should be doing, and you don't even know what the should be is, but you just got to get up because you're supposed to be doing something, because you can't be sitting still, because then you have no value as a person, right?
Mhm.
And that's the big thing, right? So getting that generalized anxiety and the monkey mind screaming is generally where most people come to me to begin with.
Mhm.
Now, if people have been on their path for a little longer, then they may come in at that second stage.
Mhm.
And then the thing that the second stage actually does for you is prep you for the third stage, which is shadow work. And
Mm.
I find a lot of people try to skip to the shadow work. They're like, oh, I need to do my shadow work. It's like, but if you don't do the first two things first, one of two things is going to happen. Okay. Number one is you will either, if you have terrible sense of self-preservation, which most of us do, let's be honest, then you will re-traumatize yourself. And
Right.
then that is not good. And
No.
then if you have a good sense of self-preservation, then nothing will happen. And what that does is it actually reinforces the idea that it can't be fixed. And I think that one's
Mm.
almost worse than the first one because we've already been traumatized before. We can manage re-trauma, but feeling like there's no hope is worse in my mind, right?
Yeah.
So this is why it's so important not to rush your shadow work
Yeah.
because it's it's not a faster path. Okay.
Right.
It
Right.
isn't. That's the hardest thing with perfectionists and control freaks is that we want to get there yesterday
Mhm.
and we want to be done. And those
Mhm.
two things are incompatible with spiritual process because
Mhm.
being done is something that isn't happening ever. You know,
Yeah.
you're always in process. I've been hardcore on this path for almost 25 years now, and I'm still working it. I'm still
Yeah.
working stuff today I mean, is it at a farther along path? Yeah, it's absolutely much further along the path. My day-to-day is a much happier place than it used to be. In fact,
Mhm.
I'm happy most days, which I could not say 25 years ago. Most
Yeah.
days 25 years ago, I was getting by. And some days
Yeah.
not so much on that. I was fine. I was fine.
Right.
Yeah. And but you're never done. That's the other thing. And
Mhm.
then wanting to get there yesterday is a constant focus on the future and
Mhm.
not a presence in the moment. And all the work in spiritual work is done in the present moment. So one of the first things I tell my students when they come in is I'm like, you have to give up the goal because the goal's out there and the work is here.
Right in this moment.
Yeah.
Mm.
So it's about bringing everything into presence and bringing everything into awareness and stepping into a place of knowing who you want to be and then
Mhm.
living into that, right?
Yeah.
It's not about, oh, out there I'm going to be this person. It's no, today I'm going to be this person, right?
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. You know, I'm so many great nuggets again. I appreciate that you're again being honest and vulnerable that there was a time when you didn't have it quote unquote all together and you weren't like happy all the time. I fall into this trap of people saying, "Oh, you seem like you're happy all the time." I have a very positive attitude. That helps me get through a lot of the nonsense. Okay. I also use humor to help me get
Mhm.
through a lot of the nonsense, but um, I do aim to stay present moment focused as much as possible, so that the perfectionism or the people pleaser doesn't overtake. I'm curious, when individuals come to you and they're maybe in level one or level two, what's an example of one activity, task that you do with them to help them grow, shift their thinking, and their perhaps shift their resistance?
Yeah. So there are two tasks that I give people that they resist the most. And so I'm going to share those.
I love that. I love that.
So the first one is what we call our red dots. And it is the little red dot on the map that says you are here. And so it is
Mm.
basically a self-assessment. And for some people, this is the first time they're doing any real self-reflection. And so, they answer, I think it's 7 or 8 different questions. And, it's a written out, several paragraphs answer for each one, right? But that is so important to do because at the end of the 4 months of that first program, I have them do it again. And I want them to look back
Mm.
because inevitably what happens is that they look back and they go, I can't even imagine being that person. I can't believe I said that. Right.
Yeah.
Because we just block out everything from our experience. Right. And we just don't remember. And therefore we don't see our own progress. And so that one's so important for that reason. The other one, and this is so funny because, one of my coaches right now who now teaches this program, eh, he is in the second level program and he came clean at the beginning of his program, which was a year ago now, saying that he had never done the red dots the first, or no, had never done this exercise the first time through. And
Okay.
this exercise is the Go Me box. And it is about taking everything that's ever been said nice about you and writing it down on a different one item per slip of paper, right? And writing it down on a piece of paper and creating this box filled with all these yummy things about yourself.
Mm.
And that includes accolades, it includes testimonials if you're in business, it includes, love letters, it includes anything nice anybody's ever said about you that you didn't write down, but you remember, you're going to write that down and add that in. Anything that you feel proud of that you've done, things like that. And it is the single most resisted exercise in my program.
Why?
So I have like 3 different things telling people why they have to do it.
Yeah.
And then when they finally do it, they say it's one of the most impactful things that they've done. And that's the reason why you said why. It's the reason why is because here's the thing. And I tell people this all the time when they're thinking about signing up for my classes, because if you're not a little scared and a little excited about joining the group, then you shouldn't join, because we live in the eternal moment of now, and your soul is tapped into how this is all going to come out for you. And if you're not excited and scared, then it's not going to work, right? Because there's no juice in it.
Yeah.
Therefore, you can say it's not going to work for you, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing is true with the Gomi box, right? They feel that it's going to be super impactful, and therefore they go, yeah, and they freak out. And it also goes against cultural programming from childhood, where, especially in my generation, you were told, don't get a big head.
Oh,
Don't tell
I know.
anybody that you're good. Don't say anything nice about yourself. That's not okay. And then, anything else that was given to you in terms of you weren't good enough, right? And so you're going against cultural programming and childhood programming in order to do the exercise. The average American child gets 437 negative messages a day for every 3 positive messages they get a day.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's habit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow. You just kind of blew my mind there with that stat. So it's really not shocking that people have such a hard time.
No.
Shifting.
And it's also not shocking that it has such a big impact.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. And I realize with your classes there are steps in certain orders in order to move people through. I'm curious, what else would you suggest for people who are looking to manage their energy as a perfectionist or overachiever?
Great question. So glad you asked. So the average people pleaser, overachiever, perfectionist is also an empath. And that means that they feel deeply what other people feel, sometimes to the exclusion of understanding what their own emotions are in that situation. So if you've ever been in a position where you were out on a date and the other person was really into you and you felt like you were really into them, and then you went to the bathroom and you were like, wait a minute, why am I into this person? I'm not really that excited about them. In fact, I see a bunch of red flags. They're not, I need to go, right?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
because that other person's emotions overwhelmed yours. And that is actually a function of how you hold your energy field. The fact that you are holding your energy field out far enough that other people are actually inside your field. So if you've ever tried to put up an energetic shield and said this doesn't work, that's why. It's because you're holding your energy field out far enough that people are inside of your field. And so the thing that has to be done is you have to learn how to do that. You have to learn how to move your energy field back in. I actually give that away on my website.
Cool.
It's called Boundaries for Empaths. And if you go to my website and click on the blog button on the right-hand side, you'll see Boundaries for Empaths. It's a free e-course. Just click on it and do the instructions in the e-course. It is life-changing to do this.
It sounds like it.
It's massive. I can't tell you how many people have been like, oh my God, I feel so much better. It's just crazy. And so some symptoms of needing to do this are you get called intimidating when you're not trying to be. Yeah, you get overwhelmed by other people's strong emotions. You have a hard time being in large crowds. You are terrible at breaking up with someone. It takes forever, and you'll sometimes go back multiple times, and
Right.
you hold on way too freaking long, right?
Yep.
There are so many pieces that go into this. When you are in partnership with somebody, you don't know where you end and they begin, and you'll often feel their feelings and think their thoughts and things like that. So if you hold your energy field out really far, then you may find that global conflicts impact you deeply. And if you're doing it at that level, you're also having a hard time being effective in life at all,
Yeah.
because the further you hold your energy field out, the more diffused it becomes. And therefore, you don't have the energy to move things through the physical world.
Mhm.
So, that all of these things are symptoms of needing to change the way you hold your energy field.
So there's a big connection to being an empath. Other than what you just shared here, is there anything else that, I mean, individuals may have already recognized that they're overachievers and perfectionists and may not have realized that they are empaths.
Yeah.
Are there other resources or places to point to? So they're going to hopefully go to your blog and grab that resource. What else can we provide these people who are now, for the first time, potentially being made aware that this is part of the whole deal?
Yeah. So I know that there's a couple books that have come out recently around empaths. I have not read them, so I can't speak to that. But I
Yeah.
will say that the Highly Sensitive Person book
Right.
that came out a bunch of years ago, that was
Mhm.
actually really good for
Mhm.
understanding the psychology of it.
Right.
Um, and the key here is to recognize that this is a safety mechanism,
Mhm.
right? We are trying to monitor everyone around us because we want to stay safe. We don't want to get surprised, especially if you grow up in a house with a rageaholic like I did. You don't want to be surprised by that. That is an unpleasant thing to be surprised by. It's an unpleasant thing to experience, but it's worse to be surprised by it, right?
Sure.
Um, and so, what we have to recognize is that the patterns that we're experiencing as perfectionists and control freaks, and I always laugh because I say, yeah, you've got a plan and a backup plan and a backup plan for your backup plan, right? Yeah, it's like I am a
Oh
master
man.
planner. Yes. So, it takes a huge amount of energy to do that, right? A
Yeah.
massive amount of energy to do that. And the thing to recognize is that this is all a control pattern designed to keep you safe. And if you can change the way you look at safety from being something
Mhm.
that's external to being something that's internal, then those patterns don't have to exist anymore. This is the difference, right? So you can do personal growth work or you can do transformational work. And those are not the same things. Personal growth work is often skill based learning. And
Mhm.
so it's like, okay, so when you get upset, here's how you manage your upset, right?
Mhm.
Transformational based processes are here's how not to get upset in the first place. Here's how not to take it personally in the first place. And it's not a thinking process, it's a being process, right?
Mhm.
Because if you have to think about it, then you're already managing the upset, right? You
Yeah.
can't you and this is something else that we do as perfectionists and control freaks is we try to manage our emotions with our minds instead of feeling our
Mhm.
emotions, right? It's like
Yep.
I'm going to think my way out of this upset, right? Instead of
Mhm.
just being upset, right? And
Yeah.
going to what's underneath the upset. So but when you're doing that, you're managing your emotions with your mind, and that doesn't work, right? It doesn't work to do it that way. You have to transition into a changing of the way you see yourself and the way you see and
Mhm.
perceive the world around you. Because
Mhm.
10% of life is what happens to us, and
Yeah.
90% is how we react. That's Buckminster Fuller. So that's a quote.
Yes.
But it's true, right? And so the 90% of how we react is based in our belief structures about ourselves and our belief structures about the world around us and the assumptions that we make about the world around us and ourselves. And so
Mhm.
when you put those together, if you assume that the world is a dangerous place that you have to defend yourself from, blah, 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 when somebody comes at you with something, you're going to respond in that fashion.
Mhm.
So, two people walk down the street. You've got a homeless guy on the corner who is just screaming at everybody who walks by and saying horrible things about them. You should just go home and kill yourself or something, right?
Right.
And if somebody walks by and they are in a good space in themselves, they feel good about themselves, whatever this homeless guy yells at them, they're like, wow, homeless guy's having a bad day. They keep going, and the homeless guy has disappeared from their memory within 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But if you are wondering if you're a good person, if you are on the verge of thinking you might need to opt out of life, and this guy yells this at you, you're going to take that as a sign, and you might go do that, right? Because you're in a different place. Same experience, completely different responses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And if you're somebody who isn't thinking about opting out, but just doesn't feel very good about yourself and you never feel like you're good enough, and he yells, "You're a horrible person." You're like, "Oh, I'm a horrible person," because it's reinforcing what you already believe.
Right.
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 And
Yes.
so anytime we react to something like that, it's because it's already reinforcing something we believe. But it
Mm-hmm.
actually has to have two parts. You have to believe that what the person is saying might be true, and you have to believe that it's bad. Okay.
Right.
So, if somebody looks at me, now I'm a bigger girl. So somebody looks at me and says, you're fat. I'm like, okay, yes, I am fat. I don't believe that's bad, so I'm not triggered, right?
Awesome.
But if I believed it was bad and I knew it was true, I would be like, yep, I suck, right? Because they've reinforced that for me. But if you can undo one of those two things, if you
Mm-hmm.
can either believe you're not fat or believe the fat isn't bad, then you
Mm-hmm.
won't be triggered by it,
Right.
right?
That's a very helpful tool.
Yeah.
That's a very, very
So
helpful tool.
it's a lot of the work that I work with people on is to
Mm-hmm.
change your perspective. When you can change your perspective about the world and yourself, you can actually step into a new identity. In shamanism, we call that a shamanic death, where you let the old ego
Mm-hmm.
die to be replaced
Yes.
by the new person that's coming forth, the new, more authentic you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people get very scared about that. They're like, "Oh, death." It's like, yeah, but if that's an old, outdated version of you, isn't it time to send it to the compost heap and start with something that's newer and better, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So
Amazing. I love that. Okay, so I think we could talk all day.
pretty much. Ooh.
So many great love. If you have a closing message for our perfectionists or overachievers, what would that be?
So I'm going to give you a metaphor that a friend of mine, Kathy, came up with. And if she says that we are all artisanal wells. So we are springs that spring forth in vast quantity, right? Unlimited energy, unlimited quantity of yumminess that is us. And
Mhm.
over time, garbage gets thrown on top of the well. Our childhood programming, cultural beliefs, anything bad anybody's ever said to us, da, 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 until the well gets tamped down with all this garbage. And we no longer spring forth. And now it's just sitting there, and the garbage is getting deeper and deeper until finally the rain comes, and the rain is this much water, just this like inch and a half, 2 inches of water on top of the garbage. And we start to believe that that's who we are.
Mm.
We start to believe that the rainwater is who we are. That's where we come from, this lack-based mentality. That's where we say, I don't have enough. I'm not enough. It's because
Yeah.
you believe that the rainwater is you. But the
Wow.
rainwater is not you. It's just what's sitting on top of the garbage that's on top of you.
Right.
So the key is to dig the garbage out.
Yeah.
Just take the garbage out until you can spring forth again.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And it was your friend,
Kathy Shiren.
Kathy Shiren. Thank you,
Yeah.
Kathy Shiren. That's a beautiful metaphor. I love that.
Isn't it?
Honestly, Kelly, so truly incredible. I know I can sense with my whole being that you are making a phenomenal difference in so many people's lives. And I will be posting all of the links for your website and social media for people to connect with you. Thank you so much for being on our podcast today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. This was great.
And to all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in once again. And I invite you to stay tuned for the next episode of Power to the People Pleasers coming soon. Have a great day.